Russia has just carried out the largest air attack since the start of the full-scale invasion. September 7th, 2025 will be remembered as the day when more than 800 drones and over a dozen missiles were launched at Ukraine in a single night. It was not just a strike, it was a demonstration of capability and also a test of how much the West is still watching. Ukrainian air defenses did what they usually do best. They intercepted hundreds upon hundreds of drones, around 750 were destroyed in the air. For missiles too. But numbers matter, and even the strongest defense cannot cover everything. At least 50 drones and 9 missiles broke through. And this was enough to cause fires, destruction, and deaths across the country. The shock of the morning was Kyiv. Not just residential districts hit by falling debris. Not just fires in Darnitsky and Svyatoshinsky areas, where families woke up to burning apartments. For the first time in 3.5 years of war, the central government itself took a direct hit. The cabinet of ministers, that huge Stalin-era building in the very center of Kyiv, was burning. The roof and upper floors caught fire. Symbolically, this was a direct strike against the continuity of the Ukrainian state. And here is the bitter irony. For 3 years, Russia avoided this target. Even when it bombed Mariupol into ruins, even when it smashed Kharkiv, even when it terrorized Odessa with nightly Shahid swarms, the government quarter in Kyiv was off limits. Until today. Why only now? That is the real question. The Kremlin had its reasons. Hitting a government building could have triggered tougher Western reaction, even direct intervention. It could have made Moscow look like it was openly aiming to decapitate the Ukrainian state, not just fight on the battlefield. For years that risk seemed too high. But 3.5 years later, the calculation looks different. The front is stalemated. Western aid packages are shrinking, and politicians in Washington and Brussels are tired of funding a war that drags on without visible progress. Moscow sees hesitation and chooses this moment. Destroying the illusion of safety in Kyiv is meant to send a message. We can strike where it hurts the most. The human cost was immediate. At least 3 people were killed, among them a young mother. And her infant, a pregnant woman, was wounded. More than 24 civilians were hospitalized. This is what it looks like when political signals are written with fire and blood. Because make no mistake, the cabinet building itself may be symbolic, but the people in those burning apartments were real. Other cities also paid the price. Kremenchuk, Kryvyi Rih, Odessa, Zaporizhia, industrial hubs, transport facilities, energy infrastructure. The strikes were spread wide, overwhelming defenses everywhere. And when more than 800 drones appear in the night sky, even Poland reacts. Warsaw scrambled its own fighter jets to secure the skies of eastern NATO territory. The war is not contained inside Ukraine anymore. It vibrates through the entire region. That Ukraine's leaders responded immediately. The Prime Minister and Kyiv's mayor called for more air defense systems, more sanctions, more pressure on Russia's oil and gas revenues. Their message to the West is clear. If you do not give us the tools, the next strike could burn not only government buildings, but the very idea of functioning democracy in Ukraine. President Zelensky, who has already spent months lobbying in Washington, now has a new argument. Pictures of the cabinet of ministers burning in the capital. That image is not just for Ukrainians. It is for Congress, for Brussels, for every hesitant ally. And what about Moscow's own message? By escalating now, the Kremlin is trying to show strength at a time when its own army is exhausted. Launching 800 drones in one night is expensive. It means months of production, Iranian imports, and stockpiling. Spending them in one giant wave suggests desperation as much as power. If the goal was to shock, mission accomplished. But militarily, the front lines did not change. Kyiv still stands. The government still works, and Russia still cannot claim victory. The real danger is psychological. For 3.5 years, despite daily alarms and explosions, Kyiv lived with the belief that the heart of government was untouchable. That illusion is gone. And once people see that even the cabinet of ministers burns, they know that nothing is sacred. This is exactly what Moscow wants. To spread the sense of vulnerability, to break morale, to tell Ukrainians and their allies that there are no safe zones left. So, what comes next? Likely, even more pressure on Ukraine's allies. The timing of this strike is not random. It comes just as Western debates about continued support heat up again. By hitting the cabinet building, Moscow wants to influence those debates directly. Either you support Kyiv more seriously, or watch the Ukrainian state itself come under fire. In the end, September 7th is a turning point. The largest drone attack of the war, the first strike on the government's heart, and a signal that Moscow is willing to cross lines it previously avoided. The question is not only how Ukraine responds, but how the world does. Because when the cabinet of ministers burns in Kyiv, everyone sees it. And everyone understands that if Russia can strike there, it can strike anywhere. This was not just another bombardment. It was a deliberate, calculated move to escalate, and the consequences will echo far beyond Kyiv's smoking skyline.